Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Hopefully, you're having a fantastic afternoon wherever you are, or a fantastic day. It's afternoon here. So, this book here, the material that's in this sucker is really the snippets of the deeper conversations that through mentorship, through deep training, we can go through in detail. So that way, what you do, how you do it, why you do it, all of those things can be explored, right? So let's begin at the beginning, shall we? Thank you for seeking to undertake this work, should this be the path for you. Now, time is the journey around the sun, right? It's the place where the moments are made, when the flow of energies become one with the celestial and elemental and planetary forces through which we experience the world. This is one of the primal constants that occurs based upon the density of the moment and the flows that exist within that density in relation to the rest of the world, right? So as we plan out what period of the year, what kind of energies, there's a little bit of a map to show that placement. Now, going through the celestial year, right? The New Year's for most pagans is November 1st. On the other end of the continent, or the globe rather, they are in March, right? It is what is our winter and autumn up here, down in Australia and in the southern hemisphere, it's their spring. So when one gate opens up top, another gate opens below, so that both gates are open. It's just what comes through in what season. So if we've got into the death worlds, into the other worlds, into the repose where the seeds become dormant in the wintertime and they become life-giving in the springtime, that cycle is repeated across the globe. So that as we enter into winter, as we enter into our dark phase, the southern hemisphere enters into its light phase, enters into its summer phase, right? So that way there's always a harmony and cycle around the planet. But we also have to consider that north isn't exactly north. North is in relationship to the sun, right? Because a lot of the spells that we use in witchcraft, in the higher discipleship studies, in planetary and celestial arrangements, it's based upon our relationship to the sun. So using things like the full moon is basically allowing us to use the sunlight. The funny pun, but it's not the same as when we build a solar craft. It's when we build a lunar craft, because it allows us to attach to the reflection of what is happening on the moon, right? It's either in its pure state of solar reflection, or it's in its shadow projection from the Earth to the moon, and therefore our subconscious to the collective unconscious, and so then into the void when it becomes the new moon, when the Earth is totally blocking it, allowing it to function as a sort of gate from this planet to others, right? And as such, the dimensional spaces in between. So east is the rising sun, right? So whenever the sun rises, that's your east. That's your north point. That's your starting point. And then what is east to that would then be your left and your right, right? So it's like your right hand, if you're right-handed, would be the south if you're facing east, right? So behind me is east. So if I face that direction, my right hand is in the south, my left hand is in the compass direction of north, and behind me is the west, where the gate into the other world opens, right? Being on the west coast of the Northern American continent, it allows for an interesting relationship, because all of the energy from across the country funnels into the other ocean at the end of the day, right? It's like the entire line that goes from Florida all the way down to California of energy. It represents that pattern when the sun rises in the east, so all the energy of the continent flows to this side, and then it's released into the other world at the end of the day. So just getting familiar with those things. And then you're getting familiar with the ingredients that you use in those things, right? So there's a correspondence list. So basic ingredients of the moon would be cucumber, poppy, pumpkin, melon, lime, watermelon, and rampion, which is a type of onion, which is really funny because if you go into the fables, it was that part of what they stole from the witch's garden that ended up with Rapunzel and everything like that. So crazy things that you can do with an onion. You know, you ever watch Shrek? Sorry. Mercury. Beets, yarrow, chamomile, honeysuckle, juniper, elderberry, sarsaparilla, hazelnut, and endive. Again, we have another one of those grass-type onions. Venus is spinach, coriander, lemon, cabbage, chrysanthemum. Edible flowers, by the way. Cherry pie. Somebody actually associates Venus with cherry pie, but cherries. Periwinkle, coltsfoot, thyme, and cassia. The sun is cinnamon, is cardamom, laurel, there's a bay leaves, bay trees, lavender, sage, lotus, the pimpernel, orange, rosemary, saffron, tansy, and thyme. Mars is absinthe, the collection of herbs, the wormwood, garlic, asparagus, basil, beans, mince, mustard, nutmeg, onion, poppy, pepper, and rhubarb. Jupiter, in this case, is aloe, beetroot, is the cherry, again. Yeah, red cabbage, quinceberries, barberry, which you can actually make a pie and candles out of if you get the wax off. It's really interesting the way that those ones work. Strawberry, flax, plum, sesame, and mulberry for Jupiter. And Saturn is coca, the cactus, rue, fennel, black figs, tobacco, and cumin. So if you like to cook, you know, everything tastes like tacos when you add cumin. So it's just a matter of which association that you're going for. So as you get into the planetary blends, I've broken it down into quick references so that way people that have this book are able to quickly research, well, I need an ingredient that is going to be the yang essence of Earth, right? In this case, it'd be horehound. Or if I need the yin essence of Mercury, it'd be the valerian root. Or the Jupiter aspect in yang would be juniper berries. Or it's henbane as it's reflective, right? And so it then moves into the creation of blends. And this is what we were doing yesterday and what I'm going to be doing every day till the end of the year is to create different blends every day that create stackable spells so that you've got the short process of creating oils and letting them sit there and letting them cure and letting them absorb into themselves over the long period. So like stuff that you do months ago, you can use in like 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Like when you create an oil, you want it to let it set for a good long while. You can use heat to extract, but I don't recommend it if you're looking for long-term solutions to stuff. So if you've got the time to sit on an ingredient for a while and you can cultivate its relationship with the intermediary that you've got, then definitely use an oil and let it set. Otherwise, to get the extracts really quickly, like what I do, is use denatured alcohol or rubbing alcohol or Everclear grain alcohol in order to be able to extract those virtues faster, and then add it into a carrier oil later, then add it into the other spell powders and things like that, so those stack up. So those methods are expressed here in the creation of blends section. And it allows you to figure out the flow patterns of what goes right to left to right, in relationship to the days of the week, in the relationship to the energies that you pull. So it's like if you're going to conjure something for the future, right? You want something to come to pass, right? And you're going to look ahead. Well, what's ahead of today would be stuff that's Mercury, stuff that's Jupiter, stuff that's Venus, stuff that's Saturn, the Sun, next week's version of the Moon, next week's version of Mars for Tuesday. That then loops back around to Mercury. So we're pulling every day that's ahead of us into the energy of today. Whereas if we're going to cause something to be as quickly as possible, then we'll pull from behind. So we're pulling past last week's version of Wednesday, last version of Thursday, last week's version of Friday, and we're creating the density of time to lock in that manifestation so that we get into that alignment. So then once we get into that alignment, we can look at the larger aspect of these applications. So there's the planetstoday.com, I believe it is. It tells planetary movement of the other solar system bodies, so that what we're doing, what we're studying, you can actually plot in live time in relationship to the Earth. Remember, we're centering it around the sun as our primary gate of operations. So it's whatever is between us and Earth, the planetary orders where the sun is located, and then where the other planets are on the other side of our solar system, projecting off into the aether. So how we pull it in, how we create those energy lines is very specific to that pathway. And then it's what time zone are we in? What astrological body are we in? What placement of that are we on? And so there's a little map that kind of explains that process of understanding the celestial alignment in relation to plotting the path of energy as it comes into your working space, as it comes into the planet. Is it going to be the dark moon? Is it going to be the full moon where the sun is reflecting back? And so we've got this really crazy, like, backwards energy that we can pull, or we're going to channel it from other planets. This is how you start that conversation, is the relationship between where the Earth is at, where the sun is at, and where the rest of the planets are in relation to the sun and us in the dialogue, in the diagrams. And it moves into axial tilt. What that does is it, again, it's where are we at on the planet in the relationship to those energies. Are they on the other side of the globe to us? Are they on this side of the globe? Are they over in Europe? Are they over in China? Are they, down there in Australia or the South American continent? Are they in North America? Wherever the energies are located, you're basically pulling it out of the planet, from around it, through it, over it, through the people, through the behaviors, and you can get those energies into your working space, into your ritual space, by having the intermediary vessels, by having things that focus your will, focus your energies, focus the non-specific energies of creation in this particular way. So as we study the Hermetic philosophies and as we apply the Hermetic knowledge, right, there's air represents the law of requests and ideas, the law of challenges, which is based on the law of movement. Fire represents the law of polarity. It's the will, right? It's also the law of cause and effect is ruled by fire. Water is ruled by the law of rebound, the emotions. You get an experience and then you have a feeling about it. You go through a situation, there's a feeling. It's the responses, it rebounds through your energy system and your relationship to the other things that you do. And there's the law of equalities, which sets the flow. Like, how is this energy like to this energy, so that there is a flow line of energy that moves through it. There is the law of balance. It's the intuition. What does it say in congruency to who you are, to how you are, to what you are, all of these different things. And then there's the earth, the law of abundance, the bodies of the things. How do you get those energies to cultivate? Like, are you doing the right things? Are you planting seed in good soil? Are you fertilizing it? Are you watering it? You're doing all of the things to cultivate the physical body of whatever ingredient, or your physical body. Are you watering yourself? Are you cleaning yourself? Are you feeding yourself in the right kind of way that allows your body to be a predominant? And then there's the law of summons, which is the fertility. What are you bringing to you? What are you bringing in new life? What are you bringing to the conversation that allows for a deeper conversation to be had, right? And so what is above you, right, in your three-dimensional space, right? Now, you've already established that depending on which direction you face, east for the rising sun, your left hand is the north, your right hand is the south, and behind you is west. Okay? Now, this is where it gets fun. Above you is the heavens. Below you is the earth. So when you figure on channeling energy from down from above into that three-dimensional space, you're able to figure in conceptual aspects of different parts of time. So you quite literally bring down those energies into your space while you're bringing up, and you create a pillar. And through that pillar, it's in its relationship to the four quadrants, you're able to get that manifestation, get that next level result within your spellcraft, and use anchors by which you can do it, so your body doesn't have to sit there and hold the presence of those individual energies. This is really good if you're working in a coven, because there's people that can take on those behaviors after a period of time. So one of my favorite spells to do that I would love to be able to pull off, it's called the Rite of Eight. So you get 8 people that channel the different aspects of the source magic: life, death, mind, time, light, dark, and chaos is the physical reality, right? And then there's the pandemonium. So there's technically 9 sources with the entire body of the sorcerer or the magician, who's actively looking to change fate, right? So that they can change it for their entire spectrum of being in this case. And so then it gets into the spell creation. And then what would you have as a conditional outcome? What would you enhance in a condition? What do you want to set the energy flow into that path for? So as you think about what active thing you can do, a spell's definition is an irresistible force that causes change, right? So we have to look at it in a couple of different ways. We can look at it from the direction of we're looking to manipulate an environment in accordance with our will, which is the science of magic. Alchemically speaking, we're looking at how does what we do translate into the action that we want. So going through this book, getting into the deeper physics of it, you look for those things, right? And so I've said it before, and I've even trained, business owners on the 4 steps, right? So first, it's the moment of an experience. Formed from the spell's ingredients, these are the intermediaries of the greater forces, so that through their conversion with the order, through the innate ordering of the inclusion in that, as well as the alignment to these directions where the alignments are most suitable. So that one's what is going to be the ingredient that's going to get you what you need in that time that you need it for that particular situation. 2, what is the experience that you want to have for that moment? What is it you want to build in small form that you get to experience in large form? And then what is the loop of experience? So where does that outcome begin? Where does that outcome end? When you're doing protection magic, right? When you're creating barriers and boundary spells for things so that they don't enter or negativity can't come in and fuck with what you're doing, then you've got to figure out, okay, well, I'm going to say this passage, this spell to divide the arrangement from the regular world, right? In that space, when I step into that space, I am creating, I am channeling the divine, I am doing these things in that space. When you come out of that space, you are no longer in that space, so it is where you are not. It allows you to dismount God. When you step into the space, you mount the gods, right? So it allows you to create that loop of definite and distinction between this is a ritual action, this is an intended action, these are intentional consequence, right? So it's like somebody coming into your shop if you're a shop owner. When they enter through that threshold, they are in your reality. When they leave, they go back to their reality. So what do you leave them with in that period of interaction? That's what I mean by setting a loop. When they come in, what was the thing that brought them in? When they leave, what are they leaving with? And then the separation of meaning. It allows you to be able to divide out what are the different applications of what you're doing. What are the different stages that you need to go through? What are the different methodologies that you get to apply this stuff to? And so experimental pursuits is the very next page. So it's like one of the best methods to test are those that you have developed yourself from client work, from the mentorship of others and the development of communities in ways that contribute. Opposing those who seek to undo such growth is also an excellent path. So by doing this, it allows us to take and change people from simple interactions of we're going to protect you in your space and in your time, and we are going to activate different things that'll allow you to be safe, to learn things, to apply things, to condition things. And so if you were doing these things fully, you'd be present in that moment fully, right? So questions you can ask are, what did you experience? What exactly occurred outside of yourself? What was this in relation to what you wanted to do in relation to the spell that you created? So if you've got a new to the craft witch coming to tell you about their spells, coming to tell you about their application of the magic that they're doing, what was the exact experience? From that, What was it that occurred outside of yourself? What was the catalyst that you understood to be what works? What is the next step of that? And then what did it do to you when you went through it? How did it go? How did you go through those experiences? What was it in relationship to that? So it gives you the opportunity to work with those questions and answers a little bit more deeply when you're working on these kinds of questions. It's like an audit of your spellcraft. It's you go through it and you record the details, you record the demonstrations, you record all the aspects and stages of what it is you're doing, so that as you change the fate of others, as you change your own fate, as you go through and you demonstrate fate, can be manipulated through these kinds of energy principles, you are actually able to study those things on purpose, right? And so it's like, what are the methods that you and your clients need to know? What are you doing to serve them? So a deeper dive into section 1 is the conversation between you and the ingredients, right? If I must change something, what will that transformation look like? European mandrake root, Low John root, maidenhair fern, really good ingredients for that. Those are going to be in the ingredients that we do tomorrow, I believe. What are the ingredients that are going to move the spell? Okay? Althea amplifies your intent. It's the mallow root, right? White pine sets the path. Olive gives energy behind it, right? But you can also use black walnut to prevent inhospitable conditions. You can use spearmint to stimulate change, the same with peppermint. Mandrake represents the transformation. We've already said that. Turmeric is will set to motion. The maidenhair fern is setting actions which begin the path to change. So when you're doing a spell, when you're creating a spell, you've got the path of change, you're opening it up. White pine represents the path itself. Althea is the amplification of it. Copal is the uplifting and opening of the opportunities for the soul, right? And olive moves the path of energies along. Dandelion removes what is not permissible from the wish that you would desire to have occur, right? So when you're thinking about the first consideration of spell creation, what do you want the outcome to be? What do you do for others with this method? Like, what's it going to do? It's not just about creating a spell, but what's it going to be able to serve? How is it going to be able to come to pass, right? So when you work this out and consider these things, you'll be able to take them step by step. So like that video I did today where it was the creation of different ritual blends that all stack together, but they can be used individually. So, but at the end of it, it's a 7-part ritual spell that can be repeated over and over and over again through the inclusion of those blends. Now, what is it that you're going to engage with the patterning within your mind's eye? What can you see happening as a result of interacting with these different kinds of energies? And so what would be permissible to that? What would be non-permissible to that? So we get into that conversation of if this, then this, right? So then this can occur. So THAN versus THEN, right? So it's the separation of intent. That's the ubiquity principle, right? So you've got a whole bunch of information. There's good information, there's bad information, there's useful information, there's useless information. What are you separating out for all the things that you know how to do and making it useful? What do you want to do? What are the ingredients that are going to best help you get to that result? And so what roads do you want to open in relation to that? So this is why I like the Low John root, right? Is because it deals with the indirect roads of manifestation. So you put something together and you've got a little bit of that ingredient in there, whereas High John is a direct path to manifestation. This stuff is the indirect roads. It's like the shit that only like the goat herders know to get around the mountaintops easier, faster, right? It's the stuff that wildlife knows about. It's native to the environment, not native to the traveler. It's the stuff from... It's the difference between visiting a city and living in one, you know? Like, if you live in San Diego, you have to have a whole shitload of side hustles in order to be able to do just a thing, just because it's so damn expensive, right? But whereas visiting San Diego, it's nice, it's fun, there's a lot of stuff to do, right? You don't see the struggle of what has to actually happen in order to be able to stay here. And so we move into section 2, creating the recipe. Okay? So we've already determined our purpose, and it's going to occur in a specific kind of way, right? Then we can use things like Rue for purification and restoration. We look at how the transformation will occur. Like, are we going to use yucca to transform the shape of a body, to transform the potential outcome of what it could be if it needs to change in form rather. Then we have life everlasting, which is going to give you endurance. It's going to be longevity towards your spell, towards its connection to the environment. We have the lingam vitae, which is the rod, one of the ones that I use, right? It's ironwood. It's really nice because as it gets older, it turns green. Then there's sandalwood. It sets the rate of flow. Black myrrh fortifies and revitalizes energies, right? Storax is really good. It's true action without subterfuge. So whereas Low John and High John take the high road and the low road, Storax is the middle road. It'll get it done, but it'll just be very obvious how that happens. Dragon's blood represents will. Black cohosh root, that's going to be potency. So if you want to, it's like Althea, but it's a little bit more hardcore. It's like the difference between a slap on the face and a kick in the nuts, right? And what will repeat the loop for the purification? You add in the Rue, you add in the yucca so that the spell itself can transform, the energy itself transforms. But you know, it's the relationship of it's the relationship inside the recipes. That's what I'm all about over the next 6 weeks. And what we're doing is we're getting really, really deep into the different types of ingredient blends that you do with the recipes, and not just making the blend itself, but the application of that blend in other spells and other applications in other works that you're doing, so that what we do and what we bring forth is specific to what it is we are looking to make manifest, right? So you do a blessing over the ingredients. I call forth the will of the earth to join with my will, as I am the one whom you are to serve, and as you serve my will, become the medium of focus, right? That's what you can do. That's what you can pinpoint into those ingredients. Now, 3 is the event. The event is a lot of fun. That is what you're going to have to go through to get your shit to manifest, right? So it's one thing to conjure up all the great forces in creation. It's another one to have to live by the rule of the road that you set forth, right? So this is the part where most magicians fuck up, is they do a spell and they don't understand that what they're doing is going to cause change in their environment, and that they are themselves also going to be subject to. So you have to be okay with living in the world where that spell exists, living in the world where that energy is different than what you lived in before, right? It's like you're in universe A, you cast a spell, now you're in universe B, and the spell is the doorway between universe A and B. So whatever it was that you did in your ritual magic, you're now in a different dimensional space wherein that energy has come to pass. So this is really, really important. And this is why you need to balance out what it is you're trying to do, so that way as you do it, you get to serve people and you get to bring them along that reality tunnel with you. And you get to move them into understanding these higher applications of what is your spell going to do. So when you create the ritual circle, when you create the divided space, it acts as a potential outcome separator. So it's like the two particles going through solid material, both at the same time, both separate yet together, right? Like it's that split intentionally created using your spell. One universe your spell manifests, one universe your spell doesn't manifest, right? And then all the in-between dimensions that go between the perfect manifestation and the imperfect manifestation. So you have to be able to figure out, all right, how am I going to force the spell to go the way I want it to without going to the world of shit, right? This is where you need to study the event. What do you want it to do? What are these ingredients going to do for you? What are they going to be applied to so that they allow these conditions to come forth? Are you opening the gates? Are you closing the gates? Are you creating a spirit from the intangibles? Are you giving new life to a totem that's before you, right? Is it an active spell? Does it need to go out and do something? Or does it need to have something done to it in order for it to trigger, right? Like you can set up spells, like if you're protecting something, if somebody's going to use negative magic, if they're going to try and fuck up with your whatever it is, and they try to aim at you, there's an indirect path that they can get to, right? Unless you've got protections and barriers in play. And knowing those kinds of things, setting up that kind of event beforehand, it allows you to actually capitalize on people's laziness, right? Like if you do the work to protect your shit, then you've got something that you've protected, and it'll indirect, direct, the intermediate stuff. Like you can plot all that stuff when it comes to your ritual magic. That's why it takes a little bit more time, but yeah, it actually can be done. And then fourth, it's the unity. Is this in congruency to what you are, to what you represent, to how you represent it? It's the natural balance that occurs between the ingredients, the environment, the minerals, the animals, the world that is where you live, and the world that will be when you are not living. Like all the relationships. This is what unity is. It's what will link you to creation on purpose, right? And it's not necessarily always straightforward. This is why it's direct roads and indirect roads towards manifestation. And so when you're going through those, we move into the deeper meanings, right? We have questions that we have to ask ourselves. It's like, do you want energy work that affects active states? Do you have energy work that affects passive states? When you do a spell, sometimes you'll be sweating buckets. Other times you'll be freezing cold, depending on if that energy is yang or yin. Right? Yin is the cold, it's the passive, it's the receptive, it's the contraction of energy. Yang is the dynamic, expressive form. So it's what will cause heat to the situation. So if you're doing work that's active, you might end up cold as hell because you become the yin energy, pulling in those energies and then pushing them out. Or if you're doing something yang, you become hot, the energy itself becomes cold. Like it just depends on how you balance those actions out. So where you are not, the energy is, right? And so again, Earth establishes a need to produce tangible somethings, right? Puts the spells into motion. It's the physical body of the ingredients. It's the practical, realistic application of them, whereas the earth is going to be the intellectual, it's going to be the mind, it's going to be, sorry, that's the air, is going to be the mind, is going to be the objective application of these things outside the body, right? Fire is going to be, is it moved to action? Is it going to be expressive? Water will be, is it going to be contractive? Is it going to draw energies into it, right? So this is why using water as a gateway medium. So if it's puddles, it's rain, scrying surfaces, things like that, it actually gets you to go a little bit deeper with those truths, as it were. And so then we get into the concept of patterning, right? What is a pattern? Well, that would be the repetition of energy. As the child to the mother, as the river to the sea, is the setting of the sun and the rising of the tides, the rising of the sun, those kinds of things represent specific states and energy that you can pull into your work if you are conjuring them properly. So like I said earlier, it's about where we are in relation to the thing that we're summoning. So if you're standing by a river, where the river meets the ocean, as the child to the mother, so the river to the sea. The river is entering the sea. You are creating something that is your parent umbrella, right? Your spell either has aspects of the divine mothers in it, or it has the divine child in it, right? It's either coming from a source if it's the child, it's either the source generation if it's from the mother, right? As the river meets the sea, there's a bunch of different energies too. It's all, where did the grandfather mountain, right, where the rivers come from? So we have the mountain, as the river flows, all the life that drinks out of it, all the fishes that swim in it, all the people that pollute it, all the ways that water changes form. And so as it enters the sea, it's completed its journey. It's made manifest. It's doing what it needs to do when it gets there, right? And so this can be either the rising energy, this could be the setting energy, depending on which side of the the divide on the continent, where like one direction water will flush down a toilet, and the other, on the continental divide it's called, and the other, it goes the opposite direction, right? So energy moves and flows opposite of that split, right? So that split is what we are studying with the deeper meaning questions, with patterning questions. And so we get into path work, and we get the application of what is path working. It is, what are we doing on our path to work with other things? Are we studying Arabic magic? Are we studying Chinese magic? Are we studying shamanism? Are we studying folk traditions? Are we studying the African tribal religions? Are we studying witchcraft? Are we studying alchemy? All of these different things that we study and we develop, this is ideas on where to start with them, things to consider. The plant, the family the plant is in, the season the plant grows in, the life cycle as it grows and dies, and the energetic associations of those plants in relationship to what we're talking about. So as we make our spells, as we do these things, we have to think about, okay, well, these are also going to be supplemental energies because these herbs are also best grown under these conditions, right? It's either some are good in winter conditions, some are good in spring conditions, some are good in fall, so it changes the behavior pattern of the energies that we're working with when we go to work with them. So again, that's the primary stages of understanding what the plant does. Secondary stages are what is the story behind the plant, what has gone into the plant, what is the relationship between you and that plant. How did you come by it? Did you buy it? Did you collect it? Did you source it? Was it given to you by a friend? Those are the kinds of relationships that you get with the plant spirits. So that way you understand what its behavior is in relation to you, so you're also bringing that into your spell work. And then there's a final stage, which is as you incorporate what it's like to feel that thing by which you came to understand the plant and the conditions of the plant itself, the third part is the love, the hate, the behavior of what is in relation to that. Like, what animals love the plant? What animals hate the plant? Like, does it repel insects? Does it draw insects? Does it feed the aphids? Does it, it's, how does it relate to the world that you're building? And in response, how does that come to affect you and your relationship to it? Like, is it toxic to humans, so you have to use gloves on it? Or, do you have to add it to something in order to be able to do something else? Like, is it part of a medicine? Like, all of these different things that you can go in and study is the path working process. So that way you can learn the relationship between you, your ingredients, and what those ingredients are going to do when you start stuffing them in spells, right? It's like what they do on that primary ingredient list is like, this is what they're responsible for. What's going to be the order that you put them in? That's what will allow you to do that different type of order. And so there's the Gnostic method, the actual interaction with the spirit of the plant, the behaviors of the plant, and the summoning of the essence out of it. So there is this really shitty concept called unverifiable personal gnosis, UPGs, right? It is the chaos magician's cop-out for people being crap at magic. Well, it worked for them, so I can't explain it. It's like, if you heard half of the conversations I hear on a weekly basis from individuals that are trying to understand what they've experienced personally, that is what UPG is for. They have spirits that walk with them. They have interactions with different versions of themselves. They have interactions with different spirits that we don't have interactions with, right? It's like, you have those experiences over there, you can keep on having them over there. I don't want to be able to conjure them out. This is where it gets more fun, though, is if you can figure out how to get them to do a common gnosis, which is something that is repeatable, something that is explorable, it can be interacted with outside themselves, like the summoning of the demons from the Lesser Key of Solomon, or the Arabatel, or the 50 Names of Marduk from the Necronomicon, right? Like, you can do that sort of thing. building it out in this universe. So it comes out of the dreamscape into this reality. As a result, it manifests in actions, it manifests in behaviors. It'll shift your behavior as you align to it when you are mounting it in ritual work. So when you're bringing those spirits to the world, essentially, it'll allow you to do that when you get really good at working with the unverifiable stuff, and you have a system of magic that lets you put it into frameworks that give language to it, give words to it, that allow you to give it to somebody else for them to be able to replicate, so that they know that you know that they're not nuts. Like it helps the sanity factor. And so we get into the compression and density aspect of these things. The differences between anything celestial, it opens the heaven doors above, right? The ghost doors are anything that's past, things that come from the past, things that are from the past into the future, right? It's like the generational legacy. What came before, and we are the response to that. We are the children of that time. We are those that came after, right? And so the earth door, it's the physical form of all things. It's like, okay, we're on this planet. It's going to manifest down from above. It's going to manifest from from within, and be replicated by tangible action in the world, right? And so that, in relationship to us, represents the human door. What is it going to do? Is it going to be animal life? Is it going to be people life? Is it going to be the soul's transmigration from people into a new animal so that they can live a new type of life? Or is it going to be a new type of energy that they're going to get to be and experience? So knowing that, and the compression of those energies in your space, creates density. Density gives time dilation, right? The reason why you can have all things in the universe compressed down to a black hole and really fuck some shit up is you create something more dense than the body that can handle it. So if you do that, like the pinpoint of matter in the black hole is not where the black hole begins. The black hole begins way out here, and it's the energy line that comes back through to get to that energy in the center, right? It's like we're starting in the center, we're compressing everything down into a single point of manifestation. So that way when we send it out, it opens back up again, and there's all the myriad forms of expressions that these energies release through. So then it gets into stages of outside applications. There's prerequisite magic. It's like the prerequisite spells are all of the 42 spells that I'll be making. Those are all prerequisites in order to create preliminary spells, first generation applications, right? So preliminary spells are the ones that you test. Those are the ones that you know could work, but you don't know how they'll work. Not just yet, anyway. You know that they'll work based on the prerequisite stuff that you've done. Like, these are what it should be doing. This is what we'll actually do. And then you move into the supplemental spells, like what do you need to do to correct that energy if it didn't move the way you wanted to. So you create a supplement for it. You give secondary behaviors to that preliminary thing that you do, which then allows you to create the primary spell. What did it accomplish in relation to other things that you're working on? You know, so that way as you go through and you create those primary spell ingredients built on other spells, it, like I said, it'll be ingredient blend number 5 with ingredient blend number 35 to create a compound ingredient. Fuck. You know, you see what I mean? It's like it gets complicated. I don't want to make it complicated. It's supposed to be simple. And dividing it out between the prerequisites, what do you have to do beforehand? The preliminary, what are you testing? What additions do you need to make? What is the result of everything when it's done, right? And then how do you use that to create better effect, better outcomes, better relationships between you and the energies, between you and the spirits, so that way what you do and how you do it and why you do it is totally fine. Like that's what it is. Like that's what it does. That's what its job is for, right? And then how you can layer those energies down is you do it by numerology, right? You make sigils and glyphs and icons and anchors and all the whatever it is, right? And so then we move into the gates and glyphs, right? So using glyphs, the difference between a glyph and a sigil. Sigils are one-time use. Glyphs, many-time use. One image, many times use. The cross would be a glyph. The alchemical arrays that I use are technically glyphs because they are repeated imagery that I use over and over and over again, right? Whereas a sigil is a once-off. That is what connects the spell to the individual, or a task to the individual, or a once-off, like I'm going to do it, I'm going to set it, I'm going to forget it, and it's gone, right? And whereas like an array is a controlled environment, right? So a glyph is the design of the array, but the array itself, once you construct it with the, in this case, the one that I did the other day, which was, it's got the silver spiral in there, it's got the planetary square of the earth in there, it's got the gate, it's got the gate ingredients to open up all four gates. So that of the heaven, that of the earth, that of the ghost, and that of the human, right? So that way, whatever I do on that particular piece of paper with the ink, with the spell, everything is there ready to go, right? So you can use glyphs as a repeated way to tap into those energies. So those would be the shape of some sub-symbols within the array design itself. So that way the energy is programmed in that location to do that thing as part of the discussion of what the array does, right? So that way you can get a little bit more deeply nuanced with these sorts of things. And then I broke down a bunch of common words and their number patterns, right? Using the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras's 1 through 9, so there'd be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I are the 1 through 9. J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R is 1 through 9 again. S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z is 1 through 8. There's the breadth of spacing between words. That's what I use as the 9th one. Because there's only 27 letters in the alphabet, should be able to do it, but, you know, there is some grammar issues with Latin conversions in this stuff, folks. So we get over it. Now, here's the thing about it that I'm going to say is that when you use the number squares, use the 3x3 squares. Now, the 3x3 squares are dependent on what planetary anchoring goes in the center, right? So you're going to conjure something up. Here goes me on a tangent, right? So when you're doing these and you are building out the relationship between what is and what is going to be the number squares. So we will start with the number 1 of 9, right? So when you're making your number squares to get these grids done, when you're going to do an earth grid, 9, 5, and 7 is the top row, 8, 1, and 3 is the middle row, and 4, 6, and 2 is the bottom row. That will channel energies from the earth using the center as 1 being the energy opening. 2 is going to be that of heaven, right? It's going to be the energy that comes down from above. Your top line is going to be 1, 6, and 8, then it's going to be 9, 2, and 4, then it's going to be 5, 7, and 3. And so you connect the dots on these grids based on the letters that you use in the Pythagorean numerology. Okay? As for Saturn, it goes into the 3 of 9. So 2, 7, and 9 on the top, 1, 3, and 5 in the middle, 6, 8, and 4 on the bottom. Then we've got Mars is going to be 4, 9, and 2 on the top, 3, 5, and 7 in the middle, 8, 1, and 6 on the bottom. And then we've got the Sun. It's 6 of 9 for this one. 5, 1, and 3 on the top, 4, 6, and 8 in the middle, 9, 2, and 7 on the bottom. 7 of 9 is the gate of Venus, right? 6, 2, and 4 on the top, 5, 7, and 9 on the bottom, 1, 3, and 5, 7, 9 in the middle, 1, 3, and 8 on the bottom. 8 of 9 is the Mercury, right? Is the spirit within the communication. 7, 3, and 5 on the top, 6, 8, and 1 in the middle, 2, 4, and 9 on the bottom, and then we do the 9 of 9, which is the moon. That is 8, 4, and 6, 7, 9, and 2, and 3, 5, and 1. Each of which has the planetary arrangements within the center. So it comes from the center of the arrangement that you're working on, so that as you do these things, as you apply these things, you have the grids where you can construct those glyphs and sigils. So if you have to do a once off, you can. When you're going to do a multiple glyph creation, you can string sections together based on what words you want, so that the image inside the array tells a story, so that the shapes become compound shapes in the same way that we compound the herbs to create a narrative conversation, to create an intentional conversation, using dead matter, using animal spirits, using these different kinds of things in order to be able to bring out different types of spellcraft, right? And so the prerequisite spellcraft, there is an array design. Okay? So that is what I'm talking about. That's where you build out what you're doing. In this case, the anchorages of the runes around the outside. So these ones here represent the 9 worlds, whereas the ones inside represent this planet, right? So you've got Midgard is the middle world, the one where we are in balance between the 8 other ones, right? So each point has within it the glyph for that extra planet. So let's see if I can see. See, the parts in here are the glyphs for the planets. The I Ching also glyphs, but the whole thing changes depending on which planet you're using. This particular one is a single planet of Jupiter, right? But the spell changes. The patterning of what goes where in this changes depending on what it is you're going to do in the center of it. So modifying it, twisting it, it's like a universal lock, right? Like it's, think of it like those rotary tumblers on a safe. And when you open it, poof, you're in the safe, and out comes the money, right? Out comes the energy. Out comes you opening up the hatch on a port, or like on a boat during a rainstorm, right? You're in the boat, you set the boat up, got to batten down the hatches, right? What happens if you go outside? Water rushes in. Well, that's what happens when you open up a gate. Energy rushes in, right? So it fills the space where it is not. And so you can do different things, different patterning. So here's another example. Again, this stuff changes based on what it is you do and how it is you're doing it. So when you're building the array of the all, in this case, whatever you bring to life in the center of it, it's similar to the one that was just shown, which changes. This one actually can be fixed. So that way, whatever you do in the center becomes exactly what you need it to be. And then I get into some descriptions about different types of blooded ink and things like that. So this shape here is one that I've already gone into a little bit, where it's each to each is their own, right? That is the spirit of creation from that specific planet. Each planet has a relationship to other planets within the nature of the thing you're trying to do. This accounts for those natures within the singular thing, right? So instead of having something that's the fire of water or the air of earth or the mercury of air, things like that, you pick a primary energy. This kind of a thing will allow you to split it out to its pieces so that you can account for all the stages that you want, and you understand that if I put it in a clockwise order, it's going to cause a spin of energy this way. If I put it in a clockwise order, it's going to cause a reverse spin the other way, so it'll push or pull the effect that I'm looking for depending on what it is I've done. So there is that. And then I give an array of walking, of what you can use as a meditative projection into. That particular spell was used to unlock a individual's behavior pattern. The way that it came about is it was to unlock his sexual repression and make him desire that thing which is inside him to be expressed more fully, so he could get into the, in his case, it was a submissive role. It was an interesting fun fact, because what wound up happening is, like, that guy got really, really hard up into his porn. Like, really hard. Kind of went nuts too. So you be very careful when you do stuff like that on people. Like when they separate, when you do spells on somebody, when you've got that attachment to what it is you've done, and then the person goes and experiences it, it can get overwhelming. It can get into really intense applications. So the ingredients for walking the path of the mind to unlock the inner hidden fetish, the inner version of themselves that needs to come out, that's the means by which that can occur. And then I give the colors and the 64 hexagrams from the research that I've been doing. Those are the common ones that I use. So I included it there. Now, we move from the prerequisite, the stuff that you should know about beforehand, into the primary spellcraft. Oopsies. Down. Calm down. Calm down. There we go. Yay! So, primary spellcraft. The camera really doesn't like that. That's funny. So there's a couple of ways that manifestation in this manner can come to pass. So it's the opening of the way, right? That is opening up the gates. That is, like I said, it's the port hatch that you crack open during a rainstorm, right? You create the spirit anchor. You create the array of walking. You create the oil for the lamps. You create the sigil for the person made on the squares. And then you open the gates. You say something like, open the gate and here pass through the road of desire that brings truth for you. From the deepest mind and the hidden heart, here your journey shall now start. Open the way to the heart's desire, be guided here by the sacred fire, right? So you do that. You cultivate it, and you give the relationship for it. And then you can continue the conjuration 108 times. That repetition changes with each meaning because you hit all 108 parts of the different aspects of creation. And then you can conjure forth the dream. What is the dream? The dream in this case is the reality inside the individual that they don't have themselves. It's that space that exists outside of themselves. It's that space that goes very specifically into their deepest mind and brings that deepest mind's reality out, which again goes back to what happened with that guy and his fetish stuff. It went a little too deep for him. His thing was gaining, so he gained like 200 pounds really quickly. And then there's the supplemental spell work. Okay, this is where the nuance comes. This is where the add-ons come in when you've got somebody who's a client and they've paid you for work. The supplemental spellcraft is to help balance out unknown variables that occur because either the client lied or the client is doing something that's against recommendations. And so you have to account for the things and the behaviors of the living individual who's fucking up your idea of a spellcraft because they won't act right? Like they'll do the thing you tell them not to do, even if you tell them not to do it. And they need to get their hand slapped, right? Well, when their hand gets slapped and the spells are active, supplemental spells are important because they'll go through and allow you to work with the different energies inside the spell and inside those energies in lifetime. So you can correct those behaviors. But if the individual is screwing around and they are just not going to listen, no matter what you have to wind up doing as a supplemental spell, it's not going to be quite as effective. The journey won't be as effective. The manifestation won't be as effective because that individual is standing right in the way of their own manifestation. And so you have to get them out of the way. This is why you go and you get work done by someone who's not in your situation. The reason you do that is because outside energy works better than inside energy for these kinds of things. So the cardinal directions, the astrological blends, all of those are included. The colors of the plane of origin, so the Asaya, the Braya, the Yetzirah, and the Atzulith, right? Talked about these before. The four states of the world of creation, the divine thought, the emanation, the creation, and the formation. right? So as these things come to pass, there is the application of what their heavens are, what the hell states are, and what the planets' earths are. So what are the physical states of the planets and their earths, right? The names of the moon, the names of the in all of them in their different forms. So when you're going to make a summons, you know what your gate you're opening, you know which planet it's coming from, you have the means by which to do that. That's in here. And then I talk about the different aspects of time, the chaos, the light, the dark, the mind, the spirit, life, and the death, all of those things. And then there's the conversation on the origin, right? So as energy moves into and out of your ritual space, what is the ground horizon? What is the pillar? And then how does energy move from below into that pillar? What's up, Ken? And then you've got what is moving at rough angles to you. So it's not just about where you are in space in relation to the four directions, with the rising sun being your primary focus. That which is above you and that which is below your feet in a pillar from the Earth's core to your feet, out the top of your head, and into the celestial bodies that you're conjuring from. So it creates diagonal lines. That's what creates essentially Metatron's cube when you are creating a ritual space around you. And so there's just mechanics on giving that kind of application for you in the process. Planning out the flow patterns is also really important. So as it moves through its yin and yang state, it's going to create active energies, it's going to create passive energies that are going to be beneficial and negative. All of it. Again, it goes into the ubiquity principle. What is going to be good? What's going to be bad? And how do you separate those ingredients out based on the supplemental things that you put into your spells as they are manifesting, right? And so then it gets into the order of the days of the week. The squares for all of the planets for their letters. What letter goes where for those planets, and for the concept of each within each, right? So that way you can make glyphs, you can do those things numerologically as well as alphabetically. So you have the sound vibration, and then you have the physical structure, which is the numbers. So the sound and the numbers put together. You get some pretty cool shit going on with those. How those things move down from above into the below, and from below to the above, left to right, all that stuff, it's in here. So that way you can go through and do that. Now, prepping for year 2 is the book that I still have to write for this one. But Lessons in Shadow Magic, right? You're working with these energies by day. You're doing spells and you're building them up for specific purposes. Now, when you have these things that you're doing for specific purposes, you have a behavior that you have. You have a nature within you. You have an understanding of you are you, that's a body, but you are also the mind that controls the body. What does that mind and the body do? Right? How does it act? How does it behave? How does it perform under the various conditions of engagement? And I mean, how do you respond to light energy? How do you respond to dark energy? How do you respond to mercurial energy or astrological energy, or all of those different responses, right? How you respond is your shadow self coming to the forefront of manifestation. So working with your shadow body, working with the place where you are not, that when you go through those experiences, you're going to have a response. What is that response going to look like? This is preparing you to open up not just the physical gate of this is the spell, these are the energies, this is what I'm doing, but it's to understand the undercurrent that occurs because of the situation, right? It's not just about the active ingredients of the spell, it's about why you're doing it in the first place. And so getting into the shadow understandings of that and the applications of the shadow body allow you to work with the world that is, the world that is not, or the world that is not yet, so that you can stand on those potential worlds and bring that energy from the shadow into this world, giving it light, bringing it from darkness, putting it to action, putting it to use, putting it to function. So it doesn't matter where you call the energy from, so long as if you have use for that energy, you have the means by which that energy can be conjured up. So we've gone just about an hour on this. So that is this book in a nutshell. So with that, you should be able to come to understand what the glyphs are, what the planetary influences are, what some of the behaviors that you can identify in those different divisions of your spellcraft so that you can make it more of a science. So you have what you're doing first, how you set up the prerequisite spells, how you do your preliminary testing, how you do your supplemental testing, and what does it do and fully done, fully formed. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to hearing your responses from this information. Stay safe, my friends, and I'll chat with you.